Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for Ohana. Let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know who. Wanna go, gonna glow.
Aloha and welcome back to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. Today we have another of our opponent preview episodes. We are going over the Week 6 game against the Cincinnati Bengals. The Packers have their third home game of the season and they look to get back to their winning ways, coming off the bye after realistically slumping in after starting the season off 2-0. Despite this being an AFC opponent, they'll be facing a familiar quarterback after the Bengals traded for Joe Flacco. And we'll see. Zach Taylor said they expect Flacco to start on Sunday with basically just the 3 days of practice. So,
Yeah, it's going to be a very vanilla offense.
I mean, I'm expecting at least half of it to be Joe, huck it up down the field. Like, just your arm is still decent. Just huck it up to Jamar Chase, kind of thing. And honestly, if the Packers cornerbacks don't have a better game, it could be a struggle for them if they allow Chase to get going and Flacco to feel any kind of comfortable back there. But
Well, McKinney can't come out and say that he was bored this game because he's definitely going to need to be covering that deep end.
Yep. So as we always do, we'll start off with the injury report. It never does feel great to have an injury report this long coming off of a bye, but we kind of touched on going into the bye that I do think the Packers are overcompensating after the Falcons, right? They got busted for misreporting an injury. So I do think that the Packers are kind of being snarky with it a little bit. You know, they like Jordan Morgan being a full participant with a knee injury that was never reported before any time. Even going so far as to say, like, Jordan Love is dealing with not just the left thumb, but also an ankle thingy. But he was a full participant.
I'm surprised I can't take him off with the thumb now because it's been long enough.
I think they're going to leave it on there as long as he's got some kind of bandage or wrap on it. That's just my thinking of how it's going to go. And I believe the picture showed he still had some kind of wrap on his hand at Wednesday's practice. Tucker, it's good that the knee isn't getting listed anymore, that it's just the elbow, that I don't think he even has a wrap on it. Or no, he did, I guess, but not like a brace or anything. Limited participants. The big ones are that Aaron Banks and Zach Tom returned to practice. Not as great. Rasheed Walker is still on there with that quad, but he was listed with that prior to the Dallas game. And then you've got JJ Enagbare,
ankle.
Nate Hobbs with an ankle. Nate Hobbs going through concussion protocol, but good that he's listed as a limited participant.
That one's confusing because when the hell did he get a concussion?
If you remember, he had that play where Dallas ran like a screen and he like kind of jumped over the pile to get in on the tackle, and then he was down after the play, and then they did the whole like side observer stop play and got him out of the game kind of thing. And so I know some people are gonna be like, oh, how come he's still like listed with a concussion? I think that's part of the weird thing with the protocol where you have to complete practice. It's kind of dumb because it's like you can't clear protocol without practicing. I do believe that's written into the CBA and the concussion protocol is like you have to get through a practice without symptoms and without exhibiting symptoms post-practice. So I get the feeling that he could be a full participant as soon as tomorrow or Friday, where it's just a matter of, it's semantics really, because he technically hasn't cleared protocol because he hasn't hit the landmark of practicing without any sort of issue springing up. So I believe that's what it is. Jacob Monk returned as a limited. Jacob Monk and Christian Watson had their 21-day practice windows open, so they are always going to be listed as limited participants. The two, I don't want to say most concerning, but the two that kind of pop your eyebrow are McManus being listed with the right quad, which pretty sure he got dinged up on his last tackle attempt in the overtime kickoff coverage. And then Savion with the groin, where, he's picking up a lot of steam in terms of his special teams contributions. And LaFleur is obviously involving him more and more on offense as the season has gone along. So you don't want to see him potentially missing time with any sort of injury. So good that he's out there practicing. And then the two DNPs are Devontae Wyatt and Anthony Belton. Belton is the one I'm more bummed about that he's not back yet. I feel like they were a little more candid with him potentially being, well, I can't say candid. They were a little bit more bullish about him being like a short term, he'll be back sooner than later kind of thing. Whereas with Wyatt, they were a little more upfront that it's like it's truly week to week with him. I do think it's a good sign that they worked guys out on Monday but didn't sign anyone, because I feel like if his knee was more, I still think his knee is more of a 2 to 3 week thing, including the bye. So like he'll miss 1 or 2 games kind of thing. And that's why he hasn't gone on IR yet. And they wouldn't technically need to put him on IR until Saturday, because the counter is games missed. You got to miss 4 games kind of thing. So there was no point in putting him on IR before the bye week. And I do, Carlos and I have gone back and forth on another thread about this a little bit. And I do think it's one where with Wyatt, they're going to want to slow play it and see if they can, get through a couple weeks with him on the active roster instead of, him having to miss more games than he'd need to, that concept of it. So I think it helps that they haven't brought in an outside body, and hypothetically they'll just, if Wyatt's down, they'll activate both Stackhouse and Brinson, and maybe even James Esther gets an elevation on game day for this Sunday. So
I'm thinking Brinson's going to have to be active one way or the other, because even if Wyatt plays, you can't guarantee he's going to go through the whole game. Not hoping that he gets hurt, but I mean, it's just one of those things. You got to have that insurance.
He's going to be
there.
If he somehow plays, he's on a snap count. Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
And then let's face it, Stackhouse is a good story and all that, but he did struggle in the Cowboy game, so they are most definitely going to have at least Warren active, if not taking a rotation with Stackhouse.
Yeah, Stackhouse, he's just not ready yet. The thing that popped out on film is he's a guy that you kept him around because you're like, that's your true nose tackle type that's going to demand double teams. Well, he's not demanding double teams at this point. And there were several stretch plays in the Dallas game where he just doesn't get to the outside shade of his man that's over him. And because of that, the combo blocker, the guard, doesn't even look at him. He just goes right up to get Quay edge at the second level. And that just can't happen. That was a big reason for a lot of Dallas's success running the ball, especially in the second half. They've got to get someone who's a little bit more agile. They're doing a lot of, they're having guys jump gaps, move over laterally at the snap and things like that. So they need guys who are going to be more active in the run game. And that was one where, we had talked about it the early weeks of the season, where it was kind of like, is the theory of what Stackhouse brings in like short yardage so much more valuable than a Brinson, who is a more versatile player? He might not maybe be as good at any one thing, but he can play nose tackle, 1 technique, 3 technique. Whereas Stackhouse, it's like he's here to play 5 to 10 snaps. And then if you have an injury like Wyatt, you're kind of shit up the creek with no paddle kind of thing. So, yeah.
For sure. And like I said, just for your insurance, you need to have him at least active and maybe rotate in. And of course, I think the big talk now, and I love how everybody's reporting on this now, but both me and you have been talking about it since last year, that maybe we're going to see Lucas Van Ness play more on the inside than on the outside. And now everybody and their little brother is reporting on that. It's like, we all knew this.
It kind of was like, my only hesitation was like, they were always talking like, we want to see him on the edge. But I'm like, the way that D tackle room always broke out, especially after they traded for Parsons, it was kind of like, well, you're going to want as many of those guys on the field as possible. And that means unless Parsons is playing linebacker, one of those guys is on the inside. And, in the Cheetah package, they have rotated, I mean, all of Rashawn, uh, Lucas, Parsons, even in Nagbare have gotten snaps at the three technique spot. So, it is part of their arsenal. And honestly, this is the game that if they're going to be a little, if they're not going to have Wyatt and they're not going to bring up an extra body to play defensive tackle, this is probably the game they can get away with being light on the interior, having one of the ends play more tackle, because Cincinnati lacks the O line to blow you off the ball like Dallas could, even Dallas down a couple starters, or even Cleveland, who could get into heavy sets and really take you off the line of scrimmage. So this is the week that we could see Green Bay go, a little bit more athletic on the front, to speak. And obviously, the big one that a lot of people are talking about this week, Christian Watson is practicing, and both you and I were skeptical about it, and not because we doubted Christian. This is at the extreme early end of, he's still, and LaFleur has kind of thrown water on the fire and said, like, it's very unlikely he plays this week, but we're not I don't think he even went as far as to say we're not closing the door. I think he kind of just said it's unlikely he plays this week, and he sort of left it there.
I was trying to think, when is the last moment that they can activate for a week? Is it the day before a game?
So, okay. So, in terms of activating for the week, it's like the day before. It's Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern or whatever. But because he practiced Monday, it's a little different because he's coming off of PUP. The 21-day thing, they'd have to activate him 21 days from Monday, because that's the first day he stepped on the practice field. So in a normal week, so if he's activated for this week, they have until Saturday to be like, he went through
well, that's what I meant more. This isn't something that they could wait until like the day of and be like, all right, we're going to activate him, and now he's going to play.
I think the only situation you could do that is if you played on Thursday, because the rules are a little wonkier, because the week is truncated for you. But yeah, it would be Saturday that you'll find out, like, when they do the whole what's it called, who's elevated from the practice squad and all that kind of stuff. And they don't have to make a subsequent move. They're at 51 players because they never filled Reed. Well, they filled one of the spots from Reed and Cox going on to IR, but then they cut Banks after the Dallas game, so they're back down to having two open roster spots. So they've brought Watson and Monk back to practice, and both have it. If they check out sooner than later, they don't have to make another move. They can just sign them they can just fully activate them to the active roster.
So here's the one thing that I have to say about this whole situation. When we were talking about when Christian would come back, the earliest we said was always going to be Halloween. Okay. I really doubt he's going to be this week. I really do. I have my doubts that it's going to be this week. Well, next week, what is it? Next week's game
Arizona
is right, which is the 19th. They may activate him, but they're going to be playing that weird turf surface that Arizona has. Do they want to put him back out there on his first game?
That's the field that basically ended Robert Tunyon's career.
So when you get to looking at the dates, if he's not activated this week and he's not activated next week, he'll be activated for the 26th, which is the week of Halloween, which is the date that we've all been talking about is the most realistic for him to come back.
And even that one is a little dicey because, I don't even know what it's called anymore, but Heinz Field's turf, I mean, that's where Jordy Nelson blew his knee out in preseason. And the Steelers field, at its worst, it's close to as bad as Soldier Field, but it's one where they all say that it gets better as the season goes, which I've never understood, but it really does seem to get better as they play on it. It's one of the weirdest things, but even that's one where it's kind of like, suffice it to say, it's not as clear cut as a lot of people want it to be. Now, that said, Christian gets through these 3 official days of practice, and if the doctors are, if he checks all the boxes, he checks out medically. If he is medically cleared, he'll be active. I know what you're pausing for, and I know what I'm pausing for. It's like 200. It'll be like 280 days from when he had, either from when he tore his knee or had surgery, which is at the extreme short end. 9 months is typical, which we're bordering on that. But at the same time, he tore not just the ACL; it was ACL and other damage, and yet it is really refreshing for a guy. We always hear blank player is having a great rehab and it's going so well and he's pushing physically. This is one of the first times for a Packers player, at least, where I'm like, he actually legit looks great moving around. Like, he really looks good. And, a lot of the clips that are being posted are him running hitches. There's like one slant route, but he's like cutting into that route pretty aggressively. It's not the like, oh, let me go take 3 jog steps and sit into a route kind of thing. He's not fully opening the throttle, but he's at a good 75-80% run on those. So I'm trying not to get my hopes up, more in the sense of like, he is coming back sooner than later kind of thing. Like,
Right, but like I said,
Yeah.
it's always been at least me and you have talked about
Right.
that Halloween is what we pegged, and it feels like one of those things, and you don't want to rush him back because you don't want to have a Bakhtiari
Right.
situation going on. You don't want to have a Tunyon situation going on where you come back and you just can't get back to form, or you're continuously having to have your knee drained because you're having issues with it. So as much as I want to say, yay, let's go for it, whatever, you don't want to push it. You don't want to. And anyway, we're getting to the point where we were all talking about him coming back anyway. This isn't surprising in the least, because we were talking, maybe not this early, but we're around the time frame we were talking about that he would
Yeah.
be coming back. Now, whether or not he'll be back at full blow when he actually is activated, people are going to temper their expectations. My biggest question is, how are they going to handle that room when he's actually back? Do they trust that if they release a Malik Heath, that he's going to make it through waivers to be able to be on the practice squad?
I don't think they're releasing Heath at this point. I don't think Heath becomes a question until Reed is back in the picture. Because at this point, you bring Watson back, you're only at 6 receivers. And Watson is going to be limited. As much as we can say he looks great and all that kind of stuff, he's not football conditioned. And the knee hasn't been hit. His body hasn't been hit in almost a year. So it's going to take time. Just like Parsons was on a snap count to start the season, Watson is going to be on a similar load management snap count situation too. So, and on top of that, LaFleur likes to rotate his receiver. And sure, maybe Heath snaps go down from a dozen to like 5 a game or something like that, but they're not cutting him until like they're dead ass certain Watson is fully healthy. And then on the other side of it, it's like Reed's hurt. All the guys except for Dobbs have spent time on the injury report so far this regular season. So I just don't think they're gonna chance. And like Savion spent the whole season on the injury report. So I just don't think they're in a position to be like, yeah, let's just cut a guy loose. Because like I said, they don't need a roster spot.
Right,
And
but I'm
yeah,
just trying to figure out how that room is going to look, because, yeah, but I guess I should add it on there when Reed comes back, because
Yeah.
then you're going to have all these guys in there, and it's like, but Heath has been reliable when needed. he may not be getting the snaps, but look at the catches he's been having to make. Somebody's going to take a chance on him.
I think the Heath thing, it's so far out because Reed's rehab is still like, the best timeline was like 6 to 8 or 8 to 10 weeks or something. So he's still 6 or 8 weeks away at this point. And to me, it's so far out that the way that the NFL goes, it's a moot point worrying about, because whether they keep
Oh, I'm
seven
going to worry
receivers,
about it. Don't tell me not to worry about it.
whether they keep 7 receivers when Reed is healthy, because that's the thing is he's going to be on a snap count too when he comes back. So it's like, to me, that thing is so far away that, what's it called? Either because of Reed still being on a snap count, there's a chance Watson's still on a snap count at that point, because they're not babying him, but they're have the proper abundance of caution kind of thing and stuff. So it's like you're still heavily rotating the receivers, and then on top of that, like I said, someone else is gonna get injured. I hate to say it, but they're gonna put someone else. If they don't put another player on IR this season, I'll be absolutely shocked. But the way that injuries just go in the NFL, there's gonna be another roster spot that opens up, and they're gonna be able to.
Well, this is, are you going to be able to keep all those guys?
Yeah.
Because, if Watson comes back, we're at 6, and Reed comes back, we'd be at 7. With the carousel that they've been kind of running with the O-line right now, are they going to be able to justify keeping 7 guys on roster?
Well, that's the thing is, if they bring Monk back this week, they're at 8 O linemen on the roster, and 8 is the, like, Mosqueda talks about it all the time. If you So the game day active roster is 47, but if you have 8 linemen, you can have an 8th lineman active as like an extra roster spot. So that's why they've it's been, I don't want to say easy, but you kind of like, oh, what are they going to do for like active roster, for game day roster and stuff. They've that's why they were elevating Banks while he was on the practice squad. I think that's why they brought Lecitus Smith back, is because right now they're sitting at 7 O linemen. Yeah, so they have options there. And so even if Belton misses this week, whether it's elevating Lecitus Smith or bringing Monk back to the active roster, they're going to have a line. Like, what I'm trying to say is, it's not O-line where they're going to be like, oh, that 7th receiver spot, do we need that for something else? Maybe it's for to bring Brenton Cox back, or Colin Oliver off PUP, or maybe it comes down to 7th wide receiver or Marshawn Lloyd kind of thing. Like, it's that, but Lloyd's not ready to come. He's eligible, but he's not. They didn't open his 21-day window. Same with Oliver. What's it called? Cox has another week he has to miss because he's been out since week 1. So they're there's balls for Gutekunst to juggle, but they're not there yet. So until we see some of those things start to get into motion, it's one of those, like, I don't want to say, you're right. I shouldn't say I'm not worried, but it's one of those where the roster spots they have, really Lloyd is the first one where it's like, okay, how do they look at that 7th wide receiver spot on the 53-man versus having Lloyd? Because everywhere else it's like, for Cox, it's like they have, because Sorrell is healthy now, they have 5 edges up on game day. And same with Oliver. It's like, okay, whether you have a 4th line or 5th linebacker or a 6th edge, whose spot on the roster does he take? It would be from a defensive guy, not necessarily a 7th wide receiver. So there's routes for them to go, but that's my long-winded answer for saying they're gonna juggle a lot before the Heath position comes into question. That's just my point of view on it. From the Bengals' point of view, a much shorter injury list. Old friend Lucas Patrick was designated to return, so the Bengals opened his 21-day practice window. Tight end Drew Sample did not participate, I believe. No, he is not their starter. He's their 3rd string tight end. Gesicki, and I forgot Noah Fant plays for the Bengals now.
Yeah, they
um,
got two Hawkeyes over there. They got Fant and they got Eric Gall.
oh,
But I think
um,
Gall's on injured reserve.
yeah, their starting left guard Dylan Fairchild did not participate on Wednesday with a knee injury. BJ Hill, who is their starting defensive tackle, along with TJ Slayton, was a full participant. Backup wide receiver Charlie Jones was a limited participant. And then their first round pick, Shamar Stewart, was a limited participant. So, shorter list for the Bengals. But as we noted, the big thing for them is they're a new quarterback. And he is going to be playing behind one of the most inconsistent slash bad offensive lines in the NFL. You've got former first round picks, you've got former high picks, you've got former Patriots, you've got Super Bowl champions, but they're all guys who have either underwhelmed or have been allowed to walk by former organizations because their level of play was not up to snuff. And I mean, it shows. This team, they allow, what is it? They're allowing their quarterback to get sacked on 8.5% of plays. That is bottom third in the NFL. They're 31st in interception percentage. And I know that's mostly an individual quarterback thing, but if your quarterback is under duress as often as the Bengals quarterbacks have been, the chances for interceptions go up. And, that's one thing that this Packers defense hasn't done a lot of. And, up until the Dallas game, they were playing some stifling defense the first 3 weeks of the season. And at the time, my comeback was that the opponents had just been going to college offenses where everything is spread out short kind of thing. And Dallas was the first time where we saw big plays popping up left and right across the defense. So this is the week to not allow that to happen. Jamar Chase is as dangerous of an opponent as there's going to be in the NFL. T. Higgins is healthy for now. And, Gesicki is not a blocker at all, but he's still a receiving threat. So,
Well, neither one of them are. That was the main knock on Noah Fant, was he couldn't block to save his life.
and it shows they've got a lot of talent at the skill positions, but the Bengals have real problems protecting the quarterback. And on top of it, their rushing offense is dead last in the NFL. I was like, I know they're bad, and I'm like, oh shit, they are dead last. They're second to last in yards per rush at 3.1 yards per carry. They are dead last in rushes per game because they've spent a lot of their recent games playing from behind, and they are dead last with 57 rush yards per game. So, and Green Bay's defense, I know that they haven't been as stout the last two games as they were the first two games of the season, but they're still fifth in yards per rush at 3.6. They're third in rushes per game at 21 and a half, and they're second in rush yards per game allowed at 77 and a half. So, you know, that what does that all point to? It helps you, if you're able to snuff out an opponent's run game, you're putting them in third and long situations, and that gives this defense what it wants to do most. And you want to have opportunities to rush the passer, and it's really important for the Packers to get back on the horse of getting quick, immediate pressure on quarterbacks to convert some of the more of those for sacks, but also induce interception worthy plays. And it was so frustrating watching the Browns play Detroit and see Flacco put up some absolute duck worthy interception balls in Detroit. And it's like, you couldn't throw any of those against Green Bay when it would have been beneficial. He threw the one bad ball, but it was end of half situation. I know some people are like, oh, McKinney's got to know to let that one go, all that kind of stuff. If he lets that ball bounce, I don't think Green Bay runs up, because Green Bay was getting so beaten up front. I don't think Green Bay even bothers to try run a Hail Mary play out of that situation. They probably just kind of kneel it down and go into the half because there's like 6 seconds after the play or whatever kind of thing. So, time to see this defense start to turn opponents over. And on offense, like, I know Trey Hendrickson was a topic of discussion for a lot of this offseason. Outside of him, this defense is not stout at anything. They're bottom third against the rush. They're what's it called? They're actually middle of the pack in opponents' yard per rush, but they're allowing 4.3, which would be absolutely great for Green Bay's offense if they were getting 4.3 yards per pop, and they're giving up 132 rush yards per game, which is bottom third. So, LaFleur is going to want to, as much as Jordan is really setting the tone for this team and has been outside of one throw, 1.5, if you want to count the one that got called back against Detroit, he has really been on one this season. And this is a week that, I know we said it about Dallas's defense. And the thing is that he did get right after a Cleveland game where he got beat up a bunch. But this is one where, especially if Bang and or Tom are able to come back for this game, you really want to see this O-line gel both as run blockers and as pass protectors and see this offense get back to being on track for a whole game and LaFleur having the confidence that he can just move the ball at will down the field.
Yeah, for sure. I was just looking at some of this stuff, and I was watching Lombardi's Bar earlier, and they had a beat writer for the Bengals on and talking to her, and she said that, the secondary is what's hurting them the most because they're just not living up to their hype. And I felt a little bit bad for you because you got two Michigan alums over there, and Dax Hill and DJ Turner. And I mean, they're defending passes. They got some PDs. Turner's got 6 PDs, but and they're taking the ball away a little bit, but it's not major. And even looking at their sack numbers, I know people are giving the Packers a hard time because Trey Hendrickson's got 4 sacks and Mike has only got, 2?
2.5, I think, yeah.
And then you look at Joseph Asai and Chris Jenkins and Miles Murphy and BJ Hill. They've got some numbers going in there too, but really there's not much on their defense that's really like scary. And I hate to say it that way, but they're struggling. And they've got 2 young linebackers that are pretty decent, but other than that, as long as the O-line can hold out for the Packers, there should be no reason that these guys can't get carved up.
And I know some people are going to point at the Browns game, but the Browns had more established players who are havoc creators on their front than the rest of this Bengals game. Is truly one where you can account for Hendrickson and kind of live with everyone else doing whatever on their own kind of thing. Like, the main thing, and some people are like, oh, what does that mean? I'm like, I don't think you should be throwing 3 guys at Hendrickson because he's not that kind of rusher. It's more like he's a high effort, good technician kind of. He's not the like athletic freak that Garrett is, where he's gonna just run around someone kind of thing. It's gonna take him some time to get to the quarterback, even on his best rushes. He's not the guy he's not a DeMarcus Ware who's gonna just teleport around the guy kind of thing. He's a more in like the Kenny Clark mode, where I don't want to say it's a slow burn, but it's like a piston compressing a beer can kind of thing, where it's like the piston is gonna beat the beer can, but you've got time till it happens kind of thing.
He's more quick than he is fast.
Yeah.
And he's also more of your strength than he is your speed. And it's something that we've talked about with Rashawn for the longest time is, Trey knows that his his ability relies on strength more than speed, whereas Rashawn knows he can do it with strength, but for some reason keeps going with the speed on it. And so, and let's face it, we all know this, and I think even LaFleur has kind of mentioned it, that they over prepared Myles Garrett. And as long as they don't fall into that same trap with Trey Hendrickson, and they, the line can stay relatively healthy, don't think you're going to have too much of an issue with it. I'm not sure off the top of my head. Do you know off the top of yours what if by chance any of the guys that are not able to play, do we have any other O linemen on the practice squad?
So Lecitus Smith is there.
Right.
That's the thing, is they're light on tackles right now. That's the biggest problem the Packers have, is the like, while I wasn't the biggest Banks fan, they don't have a lot of options. I think the only other tackle they have is that Oklahoma State kid,
Dalton Cooper. Those are the only two offensive linemen on the practice squad, is Smith and Cooper,
which is pretty normal. That's pretty average, and it's they might keep three at a given time, but you're kind of you're splitting those 17 spots amongst all your position groups, so that's not out of the ordinary to have just two O linemen. And it really is just going to come down to whether Banks and Tom can go. And what I want to see is that they have learned lessons from the Browns situation, where, like you already pointed out, that after the Browns game and going into this game, LaFleur has made comments about how he, like you said, he overcompensated, over-prepared, over-worried about Myles Garrett. And I do think that played into, like, I don't want to say they were reckless with Zach Tom. Like, Spoon Silverstein has come out and said, like, no, like, they weren't blowing steam up our ass. Like, he really was truly like a pain tolerance thing, and it's not a re-aggravation and all that kind of stuff. But what Spoon and a lot of other guys on the beat have alluded to is that LaFleur was so concerned with Myles Garrett that he kind of was like, oh, Tom can play, he's playing, kind of thing. And then he, like, went in with kind of, they were practicing one way, like, where they were like, is Tom gonna play, is he not gonna play? And then he gets hurt after the first play, and then Banks gets hurt, and then Rashid's face mask breaks and stuff. And so LaFleur is already, like, overcompensating for Myles Garrett, and then he's got 3-5 alarm fires that go off on because of injury and stuff. And so both in terms of, like I said, I don't want to say he pressured Tom to play, but I think, like, there were multiple light bulbs that were like, problem solved, Zach's gonna be able to play, kind of thing. And then when he couldn't play, it was like, uh-oh, like, now what do we do, kind of thing.
It's probably like anybody else who works a job, and they probably went up to Zach Tom or like, hey, can you play? And instead of being the typical no, he was like, yeah, I can get through it. And like you said, then that lit the fire under LaFleur. It's like, okay, yeah, we're good. He's going to play. And then that all went downhill. But I don't want to see him come back if he's not ready to come back.
Yeah.
So, whatever. But obviously, if Belton is DNP's today and going up to Saturday, he's not practicing, he's most likely not playing. Banks, I think, is probably a little bit more of a go, because even he kind of said that it's not a major concern. Just he, whatever, he tweaked it or whatever, and it just pain tolerance with him too. But this is where we were kind of saying last year we had an overabundance of exterior guys, but hardly any interior depth. we're running the opposite now. We're having a ton of interior depth, but we're having nothing on the outside. And, you know, it's not looking good. They are going to have to bring an extra guy to the practice squad. I don't care what they say, you know, unless they really think this Cooper is something else. And I don't know. I don't know much about him.
He was a guy that I did like coming out in the process. I do think the problem there is I think he's only a right tackle. I don't think he's even really a guard because of how he plays. So it's like it's always hard when you have guys, and I think that's Banks got activated over him, you know, and even got elevated to the active roster ahead of Cooper is because like plus Banks was in there the whole preseason, whereas Cooper got added a little bit late in the process and stuff. But it is one of those where it's like, okay, if Tom can't go, then you're putting Kennard at right tackle because you want Morgan ready in case Banks re-aggravates the groin and stuff. And like, it's so hard to like weigh which is worse in terms of like Zach Tom dealing with the same oblique problem or Banks is on his second injury of the season, kind of like, you know, it was the ankle, but it's traveling up the leg kind of thing, you know, whether it was compensating for the ankle and that's how he tweaked his groin, or if it's just a freak, like it happened kind of thing and stuff. So you hear different theories on which is worse kind of thing. But, you know, the big thing for the Packers and for them to like be able to string together some wins and get on a roll, this O-line's got to get healthy. And as much as you and I ripped on LaFleur, I don't want to say he has, but we've and of course it's right after I lauded the Packers for how they've approached their O-line construction and the depth that they have, that they've gone and had two like subpar games out of that group. But all the mental mistakes, the false starts galore in Cleveland, the physical, you know, missed assignments that they've had the past couple weeks or the past couple games. As much as I say that you've still got to run your own shit, I understand where LaFleur is coming from. How can I call these plays if they can't pass pro from under center kind of thing and stuff? So it does handcuff his calls if he doesn't feel comfortable running the whole playbook. And at the same time, you've had the bye to work this shit out. Whether it's Stenovich, you got to get your ass back in that O-line room and help Butkus get it figured out, whatever, you know, something we talk about a lot. Like, you've had the time to get shit worked out. The obviously most ideal situation is Monk and Tom, or not Monk, is that Banks and Tom are good to go. And not like good enough to go, they're like good to go kind of thing. And you're just keeping them limited to like not waste reps at practice. You know, keep reps off their body and so that they're fresh for the game and all that kind of stuff. So that's obviously the ideal. But one way or the other, this O-line's got to get it going. We're seeing the receiving core come around. Golden was flashing in that Cowboys game. You know, he had not just the big play on the opening drive, but he had the fourth down conversion in overtime. In overtime. So you're seeing that group come around. Tucker's being a little bit more effective in the pass game. And that's the thing is like, everyone's like, why doesn't Tucker Kraft get used? Because he's got a block. And
Yeah.
so like, you know, as much as I hate, like, it goes back to something you and I have talked about and Dusty was putting out there is like, unfortunately, because of their O-line issues, I know LaFleur wants to operate out of bigger personnel packages, but because you're dealing with O-line issues, you've got to go spread because you want less guys in the box. And I know that goes against LaFleur's base DNA. He likes to be in big personnel with condensed packages and stuff. But if your O-line is having issues blocking things up, just, you know, on standard stuff, you've got to help them out by like, okay, wide receivers, get the hell out there, have a slot who's going to take another defender out on the perimeter, and then, you know, Tucker, you're going to either help block or you're going to motion out kind of thing and stuff. So, like I said, you know, LaFleur's had a little bit rough coming out of buys the last few years. He's got to come out this week. And, you know, this should be a good opponent to hit the ground running literally and figuratively, but you got to do it this week. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts.
And there's one thing I want to say, and this has been a big thing ever since Collinsworth said something during the Cowboys game about Elton Jenkins having to look between his legs at Jordan to get the call. That's been every single Packer center for years. They've never done that little tap.
No.
They've always, it's just guys like Josh Myers and Corey Linsley have been able to hide it a little bit better than what Elton was, where they would do their look, then they would just go ahead and they knew the snap count. So I don't know what it is with Elton and not understanding what the, because if I remember right, it was always with Rodgers that they knew to hike it on a certain cue. It wasn't a visible thing. It was a verbal cue that when he went through his progression, that's what you went on. So I don't know where that weird thing. I know we see more and more teams going to that weird guard
The hip
tap.
tap. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know where this is all coming from, where the Packers are being called out because Elton Jenkins is.
It's honestly, to me, like, Collinsworth is gonna blovate and make a bigger deal out of it. The Packers aren't the only team. They're one of the last teams who do it that way, but it's like, it's much closer to like 50-50, 2/3, 1/3 kind of thing. He's pointing it out because the Cowboys do the hip tap thing and stuff, and
And I'm so weird about that, because maybe it's because I'm a little bit old school too, but I don't know how that doesn't borderline false start, because you literally have a guy like lean back and then go forward and then do his tap or whatever.
Right. And it's funny, like, the rules that allow that are like, they're so stupidly vague how they write it up. Instead of saying, like, this is the thing you're allowed to do, whether you're the center who's flipping your head down and coming back up, or the guard that's tapping the center on the shoulder, there isn't like a, you may tap them on the shoulder, or you may put your hand in front of their face and, like, swipe kind of thing. There is no explicit, this is what you can do. It's a, you're allowed to signal the center, but you must not do something that simulates the snap or something like that. And that's where you see a lot of people complain about what Elton's doing, because they're like, he shouldn't be allowed to snap his head up like that. But then the rule is like, the center is allowed to look at the line call kind of thing and stuff like that. So it's like, and the part that irritates me is when they're like, oh, Jenkins, he's doing too much. I'm like, he's not jerking his head back unnaturally. His head is coming back because he's literally looking up. But the thing,
most of the people that are complaining have never worn a football helmet in their life.
Right. And the thing that's quote unquote supposed to get called is like something that looks like Elton has snapped the ball. But what Elton's doing is, he's like, so he's down and then he's up. Like, he's not even fully up, because like you said, the helmet hitting your pad restricts you from, like, you can't do this. When you're crouched in a stance like this, you can't lean your head back this far. He's literally looking out the top third of his face mask. And so, yeah, it's like, what Elton's doing is like, he's turning his head side to side. And people that are like, he's simulating the snap, I'm like, I've never seen anyone do this when they snap the ball.
Especially with, like I said, that tap thing. Because how many times have we seen the guard literally almost stand up out of his stance to look back at the quarterback and then come down and then throw his arm out?
Right. And the Steelers, I think, were the first team to do it. Ramon Foster would do it. And at least when he first did it, he would be swiping his hand as he sat back into his stance. It wasn't like he wasn't being super aggressive with it, where, like you said, it's a very rigid, like, look back, look down, like, swipe kind of thing. He was kind of like, okay, here we go kind of thing and stuff. And then, like, so yeah, it is what it is. I don't lose a lot of sleep over it.
I don't either. For some reason, that's become the topic of debate since Collinsworth pointed it out against the Cowboys.
And honestly, it shouldn't be a problem this week because we're at home. So like, yeah. I mean, they're gonna, they've got a couple back-to-back road games coming up after this, so obviously Jenkins is gonna have to work on it, but it shouldn't be an issue this week because you're at home. Like, you're at home against an AFC opponent too, so like, noise shouldn't be a problem.
Right. All right. Let's move on to our next one. Unless you got anything else you want to hit, because
Nope.
we're getting to the point where we're gonna have to call her.
All right.
All right. Yeah. Over unders. So I real quick had to think of these because normally I at least put an hour or two thought into it, but I didn't this week because it's like I don't know. It's kind of hard coming off of a bye week to come up with over unders because it's like, well, I can't. The nearest
Also, the
game
team.
is
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm going to go with Micah Parsons over under half a sack. I've limited to half a sack because he has been targeted more on, for one, like we have talked about the last few weeks, he's been getting held and not called. Again, I go back to this is reminding me a lot of when Clay Matthews was in his heyday because there's a lot of things not getting called against him. And two, even though Rashawn has been looking better, Lucas has been looking better, we're still not getting that fill the void from when Micah disappears. So over under half a sack for Micah Parsons.
I'm going over for him. I think it's just the one again, like it was last week, but I think he's going to get on the board again.
I'm thinking so too, but I'm wondering. I'm going to go over, but I'm limited on what I want to say over just because I'm wondering if maybe they'll do to Micah what the Packers ended up doing for Myles Garrett and overthink things with him. So it's going to be a lot harder for him to nab a sack.
My thing is that I don't think the Bengals can, like, okay, this is going to sound really weird because their passing game is so oriented around the basketball on grass kind of thing where it's like trying to get five guys out. None of their tight ends are good blockers. I don't think any of their running backs are plus pass blockers either. So it's like, what's it called? Their base concept is to get as many guys into the route as possible already. And that's their like pass pro help is like you can't send extra guys on the rush. So, there's going to be one natural double team because you have 5 O linemen against 4 pass rushers. But also that means that like against the Cowboys, how did the Cowboys have success keeping Green Bay at bay? It was running the ball and forcing Rashawn to have to play run contained, forcing Parsons to have to look for the running back first kind of thing. And as the game went, Micah kind of said, fuck this, I'm going to just go after the quarterback kind of thing and stuff. But Cincinnati doesn't do those things. And I know Burrow would do some zone read kind of stuff, and I think Browning did a little bit. Flacco ain't doing that shit, and if he does, he ain't getting very far at this point in life. So I just think that they're because like whereas Green Bay is like we're gonna throw Chris Brooks his way and we're gonna throw Tucker his way or even Musgrave his way, like our offense just operates at a totally different wavelength that Cincinnati.
But you have to remember, Flacco is only going to be in the system for 3 days. So they're going to have to do something to protect him because he doesn't know the full offense and they're not going to be able to rotate in and out like they would if it was a Burrow or a Browning. That's why I'm really surprised that because Clifford's been in the system for at least since the end of preseason, final cuts, or has it been? No, he's been in the system for at least 2 or 3 weeks. I'm surprised they didn't bring him up. And if Browning continued to, do what he did, throw him in there. But it is what it is. I'm not making the decisions because at least with Clifford and Browning, you're going to have a mobile-ish guy, whereas Flacco is not going to be mobile. He's going to be more of your statue in the pocket. So It is what it is. But over under Jordan Love passing 235 and a half.
Over. I think that, like I said, I think that your money is going to be made in, excuse me, is going to be made spreading this Bengals defense out and just kind of picking them apart and getting what you want from them. So I think take the over.
I'm going to take the under because of one thing. And that's I know I've been doing this a lot lately, but LaFleur is starting to remind me of Kirk Ferentz a lot, where he's going to get so bullheaded that, he's just going to continue to run the ball. He's going to give Jordan his chances, but he's going to keep continuing to run. Now, I'm going to say it's probably going to end up being like 225 or 230, so it's not going to be too far under, but it's scary because we get into games with these type of teams, and LaFleur, again, I go back to, it's like LaFleur thinks you can only score 600 points in a season, and you got to spread it out throughout the season. So next one is Golden receiving over under 40 and a half yards.
I'm going over. I think with the struggles that this Cincinnati defense has, I think he's going to get in that 70-ish range.
I'm going to say over, but more like a 50 and a half, 55 or something like that. I really hope that they start using him more as a featured receiver, even though, don't get me wrong, I love Dobbs, I love Heath. I'm still 50-50 on Wicks, even though he's showing more progression now. So I hope they start featuring Golden a little more just because of his speed, his route running ability, his capability at catching. I'm hoping. So this last one is funny just because I keep hearing this all over the place. And they keep talking about that because Flacco was traded to the Bengals, that if the Bengals were to beat the Packers, it would be the first time since like 1950 that a quarterback has beaten the same team with playing on two different teams. So this is mentions how over under mentions of if Flacco wins, it'll be the first time since 1950. We'll go over under 7.5.
I'm going under. I just think that you're going to get, I'll go with like 3. You'll get like 1 at the beginning of the game, 1 at halftime, and 1 like late in the game, whether it's close or not. Because it's like, if it's close, then it's the like, remember, he could be the first to do this. Or like, if Green Bay, and I'm, especially with a young team, with a still young quarterback and a like unsettled O line and stuff, a 14-point spread makes my eye twitch a little bit because it's kind of like those are the kind of situations where I know Vegas is almost always right, but you get into those ones where like, lightning in a bottle, all that kind of stuff. And then, LaFleur chooses to keep opponents within arm's reach. And if you remember how the last Bengals get, everyone remembers obviously Crosby's issues and all that kind of stuff. That game is close because they had chances to like push the lead, take a bigger lead. Rodgers throws a weird interception in the first half and stuff. And then the Packers are like, look like they're in control going into halftime. And then you have that weird play where like Burrow gets flushed, he's running for his life, and then he kind of just wings the ball downfield. Savage tries to dive to break it up, and then it gets behind him, and because he dove, Jamar Chase gets up and runs for like a 70-yard touchdown, and it's 16-14 at halftime or whatever the fuck, and it's like, fuck. Like, a game that should have been like, like I said, if it doesn't work out for LaFleur, the thing that'll be on his figurative gravestone is going to be not the all gas, no fucking break, not the wake up with your piss hot. The epitaph on his gravestone is going to be dominating everywhere but the scoreboard. Like, it's been the story this whole season so far, and it's bit them in the ass the last 2 games. But obviously, like, Dallas was moving the ball, but like there was a point where they were dominating everywhere but the scoreboard. That statement has been true at some point in every game this season, and you really don't want to see it become reality again this week, because it should not against this opponent. It absolutely should not.
Okay, in a shocker, I'm going to go over because I think it's going to be talked about a lot in the first half.
Ah,
And then, depending on how the game's looking, like you said, in the second half, if it's hopefully it's not, but if it's like close, then you're going to hear it a couple of more times. But yeah, I think you're going to hear about it a lot in the first half, unless the Packers come out and just completely go nuclear on the Bengals and go into halftime up like 28-0 or something. Then the talk's going to end pretty quick. But I think you're going to hear it throughout the first half, good chunk.
the way that you avoid that, you either get up a lot of scores on them, and or you force a lot of 3-and-outs. Like, the longer drives go and the more like BS 50-50 balls Flacco's allowed to throw up, arm punts that Jamar Chase is allowed to moss our DBs over, the more that you have that happen, the more they're going to say shit like that. So
Yeah.
eliminate those chances and score multiple touchdowns. Like, enough of this being up 7-0 at the end of the first quarter shit. I'm so sick and tired of that. Like, god damn it, at least be up 10-0 kind of thing.
Like I said, go for the kill. Don't go for a wound. Don't go for a draw. Go for the kill.
Yeah. Like, I hate the people that are like, oh, but they were driving. And I'm like, yeah, against the Cowboys, they punted on 4th and 2 kind of thing, like right after the second quarter started. So, yeah, exactly. Any other thoughts?
I said, I do have a feeling that it's going to be mentioned quite a bit in the first half, just because.
Yeah.
What is this? Is a Fox game?
Yes, it's
Okay.
Or wait, no. I think it's okay. The broadcasting thing always it's CBS.
Okay.
They keep flipping it. For the longest time, it was the home team is the channel, but I think in the 2000s they shifted it where the road team is the one who's brought. So like AFC is CBS, NFC is Fox, and so
Maybe because it breaks the blackouts or something.
something like that. Yeah. I think that's what it is. So because the Packers are at home, it's a CBS game.
So does that mean we're going to have Romo?
No, I don't. Or do we? No, I think Romo is at. Oh shoot! Hold on. 506 Sports.
Because if we have Romo, then I'm going to put it at like 20.5. Because that bastard's going to just keep saying it over and over and over again.
We have. Nope. Romo and Nance are they're on the NFC poll game for CBS. We've got Green Bay's own Kevin Harlan and Trent Green.
Well, then I could see Kevin saying it a couple of times.
Yeah, because especially Trent's played for a bunch of teams, and I can see Kevin doing the like, hey Trent, have you've played for a couple teams, have you ever been traded in season kind of thing? And like, yeah, like I can especially because Trent's a quarterback, he's played for a few teams kind of thing. I can see
the Packers have to do this once before. Wasn't it Baker that was like on the Rams and then it was on like the Panthers and then went to the Rams?
Oh, maybe it was. I know for sure they did it in 2011 because Orton he started for the Broncos. That was Woodson's last pick 6, and then he started for the Chiefs when they lost the undefeated season. So I know Orton's done it, and then I can't remember. Hold on, let me look that up.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember either. I want to say it was Baker.
Yeah, hold on. Okay, maybe he did, but we didn't play him that year, if that makes sense. But yes, Baker did start against us in that 2022 game.
Yeah, because I know it was Rippon that started for the Rams that year against the Packers. I'm pretty sure, but I think they had just signed Baker or something, and they were reluctant to put him out there because they had literally just brought him in.
No, the 2022 game Baker started.
Oh, okay. Then was it that he went to Carolina?
I think he came from Carolina that season. Yeah.
Okay, well then maybe I'm remembering it wrong.
Yeah, he came from Carolina.
Okay, but I was pretty sure there was some other quarterback other than the Orton one that was more recent. But I guess that's research I'll have to sit down and do. I'm not going to do it now.
All right, but that's all I've got for this one. I wish that we had more to say, but this team has been relatively inconsistent with how they've gotten about this season because of all the injuries they faced on the O line. There's been a bunch of, you know, LaFleur hasn't been able to call the games he's wanted to call because of the injuries on the O line, because he's waiting for guys to get healthy. Can't go to his under center game as much as he'd like because of the issues he's dealing with and stuff. So, we'll see. We'll see. I'd love to have more concrete answers, but it's gonna take some clarification.
For sure, and it's also tough this week because we're coming off the bye, so we don't have anything really. The last thing that we have to go off of is the Cowboys game. Mike's being invaded, so that means we're going to have to wrap up here pretty quick. So
The pups are going home for the night. And on that note, as Joe said, we're gonna put a bow on this one. Like we said, it's not that we're running out of things to talk about. It's actually that we don't have enough surefire answers to give because this team is in flux based on where they're at injury wise. So that is something that I'll be interested to see how it plays out over the course of the game. But like I said, the main thing is just have a better plan and have a better contingency if that initial plan goes up in smoke. Because, like I said, looking back on the Cleveland game, I understand why it happened, but that can't be your response is to panic if your initial plan, your already duct tape and scotch tape together plan goes down in flames. Like, you can't be like push the red button that's not working kind of thing. So have a little bit more poise under fire in that case. And the one that I keep going back to is trust your quarterback. LaFleur was so ready to turn the key. Not that he just tossed Love the keys in 2023, but it was made very clear that this team is going to go as far as Jordan can take them. And, you know, and I don't think LaFleur doesn't trust Jordan, but it gives credence to the, like, he's sheltering his offense because he's worried Jordan's going to make the big mistake. I think it's more because of the O-line inconsistencies, poor play. LaFleur's like, can I trust them to run all my bootleg deep drop packages? But it's going to always come off as he's afraid of his quarterback. And, like, Jordan might have good stats, but it's because LaFleur is he's hand signaling everything. He's drawing everything up and setting it up on a platter for Jordan, which couldn't be further from the truth. Like, you don't get the
even if it was true, what quarterback in the NFL doesn't?
Right. You still have to execute. Like I said, I've matured to the point where everyone's like, "Oh, Tom Brady's just a system quarterback." His superpower is that he fucking knew his system inside out, was willing to throw to whatever guy was open, and he would do it. And he's got 7 rings in his pocket because he's like, I trust this offense is going to run, and my job is to deliver the ball on time and on target. And that's a superpower. Like, and what separated him is he could throw the ball to all parts of the field, kind of thing and stuff. And, getting back to the Jordan of it all, it's like, your guy can do it. He might not be as accurate. He might not make always the perfect decisions, but he's been right way more than he's been wrong. And that's the thing is, like, everyone's like, oh my God, he farves it. But I'm like, he farves it on the bad plays. But the bad plays and the bad play opportunities for Jordan are not nearly as frequent as people make them out to be. You've got 2 plays this season where 3 plays, I guess, because of the sack fumble against Dallas, but you got 3 plays this season where you can be like, what the fuck was he doing? And so it's the sack fumble against Dallas where he's got, as much as it was dumb for him to be in that position, he's got to be more aware of the edge rusher in that scenario. The against Cleveland, I'm still of the belief that he got duped pre-snapped and he tried to save it at the very end and he just couldn't hold on to the ball kind of thing. And, and it still took a really nice play by Grant Delpit. And then the pick six that wasn't against Detroit, I think he knew that he got the flag and then he was like, let me just try throw this thing. And Brian Branch makes a stupid good play on that ball that sure, Love could have thrown it another foot outside, but he's like, I'm throwing it to a tight end, so it's still got to be sort of on his. Even though it's Tucker, it's like he's not a receiver. He can't sprawl and jump. He's not going to dive 3 feet wide, kind of thing and stuff. So, you know, all that to say, trust Jordan. Put it on Jordan. You're paying him to be that guy. Let him go be that guy. And he almost bailed the whole team out against Dallas. And that's your guy. Josh is really great. Josh is single-handedly propping up this run game because he's getting 92% of his yards are after contact kind of thing. And he's had a couple misreads and stuff. For the most part, all the stuff he did against Dallas was let me discard this first defender and then I'm going to go run for 10 yards afterward kind of thing. So it's help Josh out, get extra guys out of the box and stuff, and run to set up the pass to set up the run. But
speaking of Josh Jacobs, I do have the new design up in our Halloween collection of the Soul Stealer.
Nice.
Go over to now. Things have changed. It's not quite on the Packers or on the ohanapackers.org site. You can still go over there and click on store, and it should take you to the actual store, but it is ope-shop.fourthwall.com. Now that's a mouthful, but it does
take you there.
It does take you there.
So whether you want to, and fourth wall is spelled out, not the number 4th, FOURTH. But instead of remembering
so
that,
it is up over there. It is, the font does come in 2 different colors. You've got plasma purple and blood red, and make sure you go over there. It comes in t-shirts, hoodies, pint glasses, and mugs.
Yep. So check it out. Just tested the link to make sure it's going right. It does. Check out our articles there. Check out the recaps of all the stream episodes from us on OPE and from Cheese Talk Radio. Those are all on the website. Follow the podcast on your social medias at Ohana_Packers on Twitter, at Ohana Packers Edition on Instagram. On Facebook, search Ohana Packers Edition. Please follow us there. I keep saying it. Trying to get to our 100 followers so that when we do our live streams, we're live streaming not only on Instagram or not only on YouTube, but also on Facebook as well. Follow the podcast on your favorite podcasting apps. Please give us a like and a subscribe. And especially for nights like this where, we're trying to come up with all the things to think about during the game. If you have any thoughts or questions that you want us to talk about or topics to sort of jump over and discuss, please send those to either of us individually. Send it to the show's Twitter account, to the Instagram. We want to create the content you're looking for. So with that,
or if you just got somebody that you want us to talk to, I have no problems sending messages out for people. Unfortunately, right now I can't go to Green Bay to stock Lambeau Field for anybody, so we'll have to be a message. But yes.
So with that, like I said, Packers are trying to get back on the winning side of things. Forget who it was. I think it was Felice or Wendell. Someone put on that the Packers, by virtue of losing and then tying their last 2 games, it's been a month. It will have been a month since their last win. So get back on that winning side of things. That's the one thing that they've struggled under Love, is that they just, they've not gotten off to that run to start a season. We thought they were going to do it this year and they stumbled. So stop the bleeding, get back on the winning side of things, and let's get marching on the winning side of the column again. So with that, go Pack Go and aloha.
Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for the up. Let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know who. Wanna go